Ramon from University of Oviedo. This time we face how to draw threaded fastenings.
Threads are inclined planes around cylinders. An inclined plane is one of the basic machines. They reduce the force necessary to move a load a certain distance up or down by providing a path for the load to move at a low angle to the ground. So this lessens the needed force but increases the distance involved so that the amount of work stays the same. These are the parts of threads. It's important to know where is the crest, which is the minor diameter, and the major diameter. Most of the threads used in engineering are standard. There are different types of standard threads. Here you can see some examples of different types of standard threads. The metric one is one of the most common threads, but you can see here Whitworth, trapezoidal, and electric one. When drawing threads, we can use a detailed representation, as you can see here in these images. You can see the external thread and the internal thread, both with a detailed representation of the thread. We can also use a simplified one, as you can see in these examples. We will use this one. Let's have a look more in depth. Here you can see how the external thread has a thicker line than the line that represents the minor diameter. In internal threads, on the other hand, we have a thicker line in the inner diameter and a thinner line in the major diameter. You also can see in the representation of the hole how there are some lines that represent the end of the thread, thicker one, and the end of the drilled hole. When you combine an external and internal thread, as you can see in the image, you have to pay attention because the external thread is drawn over the internal thread, always. Let's see how to dimension threads. In an internal hole, as you can see here in the right image, we are going to use 3 dimensions. 2 for the length of the hole and the threaded hole, and 1 for the diameter and the type of the thread. In this case, the M stands for metric. You also can see in the left image how to indicate a hole in a simplified way. In external threads, we're going to use only 2 dimensions, one for the diameter and another for the length of the threaded part. Let's talk now about bolts. These are perhaps the most common parts, threaded parts, used in engineering. You can see here how we use a bolt to tie 2 different parts. Only the bottom part is threaded. In the top part, there is a small gap between the hole and the bolt. You can see here how the external thread is drawn over the internal thread. This is another use for bolts, for guiding objects. We can also use bolts for pressing. This is the way we dimension the bolts. Take into account that the dimension length is always the length of the part that can be inside of another part. We usually use bolts with nuts. Nuts are also standard parts. Another very common element are washers. For representing a washer, we can section the washer or just use an unsectioned representation of the washer. Finally, the studs are sort of bolts without head. They can be threaded in both parts. And that's all for today. Hope you have learned a lot of things about threads and bolts. See you in the next lecture.